Okay, we're now ready to set up our tract, and this far left icon over here is the tract setup icon. Now, the software will have an internal cost tract already set up. That's generally only used if you want to use the equipment cost or truck cost tracking portion of our system. And we're not going to cover that in this session. So we really do want to come down here and hit the Add button, which will launch the Tract Setup Wizard. So the software is basically just going to all but hold our hands through the setup process. And step one is to set up the county that this tract is in. Now, if you don't care about the county, just pick a none here. But if you're in Georgia and you pay stumpage, then chances are you do care about the county. So I am going to assume that this county is in, or excuse me, this tract I'm about to set up, which is the Stella Anthony tract, is in Ben Hill County. So I can add it right from there, and it's now selected in blue, which will allow me to move to the next step here. And then again, the job type, that's optional. If you don't care about tracking a job type, just choose none. But I'm going to assume that this is a first thinning job. Okay. So again, that adds it to the list so that it's available for the next tract that I set up. And it also selects it, which you can see in blue. So this tract is the first thinning tract. Now, this screen is where you tell the software, when I enter load tickets into the system, do I want to be entering them in pounds so that the software can convert them to tons? Or do I just want to capture the ton amounts? So at least for today, we're just going to go with tons. So we're going to enter all of our tickets in tons. And the next screen will default to tons. And so we're just going to accept that default. And most of our, certainly Southeast users will always choose tons in this volume measure step of the Tract Wizard. So again, there's two steps here. This one, the unit of measure for deliveries, that says when I enter my weights, do I want to be entering them in pounds or in tons? I've chosen here to enter them in tons, and generally you want to make an election that will apply across all the tracks that you set up so that your delivery unit of measure is consistent across all your tracks. So tons here, and then tons in the next step as well. Here is where you go ahead and give the tract start date, so the earliest that you may start cutting on it. And you probably don't know the end date that you're going to finish it up unless you have a contractual end date with the landowner. So for the time being, I'm just going to type in 12/31, and I can hit my next button, and I don't have to put the year. If I leave the year off, the software will be smart enough to know that I can, or that it can assume that it's 2021. And you also have a calendar here as well, if you want to use it. Okay. Now, this is where you would set up the delivered prices, the revenue that you receive from customers like Rayonier or like West Fraser for the wood that you deliver to their facilities. I'm not going to take the time right now to put those rates in. We can add them after the fact, but that's what the first step here is in terms of the next three windows. So this screen, and then the next one, and then one more thereafter. are the screens where you put in the rates, the pay rates in this case. The prior screen was revenue rates. So think of the prior screen, which I'm going to go to. This is customers of yours, so people that are paying you money. So this is the good side of the coin, money coming into the bank account, which I'm going to skip for the moment. But I am going to go ahead and enter money going out of my bank account to either contractors, like a trucking contractor, like my Jack's Trucking, or a landowner, or both in our case. So really think of this word contractor more as payee. A payee would be more descriptive. So let's go ahead and get the rates set up in here for Stella that we're going to have to pay Stella Estates for all of the wood that is coming off of this tract. Now, in the case of the landowner, our activity that we're going to choose is stumpage. So we're paying Stella Estates stumpage, and let's say that the stumpage is one rate for hardwood pulp and then a different rate for pine pulp. So let's just say that we've got $2.50 a ton. So we'll pick ton here in the basis for hardwood pulp. Now I'm going to copy this row and we'll have a slightly different rate for pine pulp. Alrighty. If I scroll to the right a little bit further, just a couple of additional comments. The pay by adjusted net indicates whether I'm going to pay the landowner after coal has been deducted, if there is any coal that you have to worry about, or if I'm going to pay them on the net amount, meaning the net weight, before any coal deductions have been made. So for this example, I'm just going to keep it simple. I'm going to leave those boxes unchecked so that Stella Estates will get paid on whatever the net weight is of the load as it crossed the weigh scale. Okay, now I also have Jack's Trucking to pay in connection with this load, so I'd like to go ahead and get his rate set up as well. Now, I have a couple options here. First of all, I'll go ahead and select my activity so that it's clear that I'm working on my trucking rates now. And I could pick Jack's Trucking here, and I'll do that first. But then I'm going to come back and talk about our little handy trick when it comes to trucking to help you minimize the amount of setup work that you need to do. So let's pretend that Jack's Trucking is paid 13 cents per ton per mile. So in the Logger's Edge language, ton mile is a distance weight basis. So we'll set up the miles here in another step or two within this wizard so that the software knows how many miles it is to each of the destinations that you're going to from this tract. We also, though, have to tell it, okay, we'll tell it the miles here in a couple steps, but we need to tell it that in terms of the weight measure, we want to be using the tons on the load. And why, might you ask, would we need to express that explicitly? Well, it's because some loggers, believe it or not, pay based on the cord mile. So we're telling it explicitly, we are paying 13 cents per ton per mile. Now, if Jack is the only trucking company that I have working on this tract, Stella Estates, then I'm home free. That's great. But what if I have 4 truckers that are all potentially hauling out of this tract to the various destinations? Well, then I would have to set up 3 additional rows one for each truck. And if I've elected to pay them all different rates, then that's exactly what I have to do. But in my world, I'm not doing that. If you're a trucker for me, I'm going to pay you 13 cents per ton per mile. So instead of choosing Jack's Trucking explicitly, I can choose this wildcard owner that says, regardless of who owns the truck that's on the load ticket that I'm entering, that company that owns the truck on that load ticket, that's who needs to get paid for that particular load ticket. So this single row will allow you to cover the rate for any load brought in by any contract trucker. So this is about as simple as it comes, and notice that I am leaving some of these fields blank. When I leave the field blank, the software says, regardless of the product that I'm carrying, and regardless of the crew that harvested it, and regardless of the destination that I'm going to pay 13 cents per ton per mile. Now for Stella, my rates do vary depending on whether it's hardwood pulp or pine pulp. But as far as the landowner is concerned, they don't care whether I'm delivering hardwood pulp to this mill, that mill, or the other mill, because they just know that they've negotiated a rate with you that says they'll get $2.50 per ton if it's hardwood pulp. So when we leave these fields blank, we can economize on the amount of selections we have to make in this window. Because if I'm delivering hardwood pulp to 3 different mills, I don't want to have to put in 3 different rows, each with the different explicit mills, if one row will do. Okay, so I think we have ourselves covered on the payee side of the equation. Again, this is rates going out of your bank account. The next screen is for workers, and really it would only be used if you were paying your own employee drivers based on the mile, or based on the ton mile, or based on the ton, or even so much per load. But again, in my simple example, I don't have employee drivers that I'm paying. I have contract truckers and I have a landowner. So I'm going to leave this screen blank. You'll always choose the generic conversions, or I should say almost always, if you're a Southeast US user. So I'm going to keep it simple in this screen and just accept the default. This screen would allow me to set up cruise volumes. So if you had a forester go out on the tract of land before you agreed to buy the stumpage on it, and they estimated that you might have, 1,000 tons of pine pulp coming off and 700 tons of hardwood pulp, then you could enter that into this screen. Again, I'm going to skip it for the time being. This screen I do need to pay attention to, though, because I'm paying my trucker based on the ton mile. So let's say that from the Stella Estates tract to the Rayonier Jessup facility, and I'm just going to use the on-highway distance here. Let's say that that is a 60-mile trip. And let's say that the West Fraser Fitzgerald is much closer. Maybe it is only 45 miles. Now, a lot of companies have minimum distances that they will guarantee their truckers, and the software is definitely capable of handling that. I'm not going to cover that in this particular video. This would allow you to set up a landowner advance. So for example, if you told the landowner, I'm going to pay you $10,000 up front, and then I'm not going to pay you anything more until I've essentially cut $10,000 worth of timber from the tract. And the moment that I hit the $10,000 worth of timber, then I'm going to start paying you out again. So that's what this screen is for, and the software will generate a very nice professional looking settlement for the landowner so that he can see load by load the value of each of the loads and can see from 1 week to the next how far you've worked that advance down. And then once you've worked the advance entirely off, the software will start paying out to the landowner again, even if it's midway through a load. So again, that's what this window is for. We're not going to set that up now. We're just keeping it very simple. And finally, I get to set up my tract name. And again, I want to keep it fairly short. In fact, I'm just going to give it the exact same name as I gave the vendor when I set the vendor up. So in this case, I am naming my tract to have the exact same name as my vendor. Now, it turns out if Stella Estates is somebody that I'm going to be doing business with again, which given that this is a first thinning, there's a good chance that I might be, then I may want to append 21 behind my tract name. And I'll go ahead and put it here as well, and here for good measure. Lots of times people will want to use this description field as a more of a, say, a legal land description. So you can use it for whatever you want. It's here for information. It does not show up on a settlement sheet itself. Instead, it's this short code that will show up on a settlement, and the code must be unique. No tract can repeat its code, so that the software will enforce this to be unique. If you want to put in the acres, you can. If it was a lump sum purchase, which this particular tract, of course, is not. My tract is a pay-as-cut tract. But if it was lump sum, you could put the purchase price here. There are other fields that could be enabled if you have other fields that you would like to track on your tract. But for now, again, we're just going to go with the defaults and keep it simple. So I'll hit next. And remember, it's not until you work your way all the way through and hit this finish button that your data will be saved to the database. So if you ever get into a situation where you are partway through a tract and somebody comes in and interrupts you, don't just hit cancel, which is available on these other screens. Don't do that unless you're willing to lose everything that you've set up so far. Instead, just move yourself forward through the wizard till you can hit finish, and then your new tract will appear as a new row.